Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned for a special announcement. It's a special announcement video today, Roger, because it's time for another reading event coming up next month. I know, another one. We're right in the middle of June on the range and reading Westerns, but July is right around the corner, and July is time for Rocket Summer, a celebration of classic science fiction. Science fiction is the best, and classic science fiction is my personal favorite. Now, as far as the event goes, classic science fiction is science fiction that was written from the beginning of science fiction, whenever that was, up through the 1960s. Now, in the 1960s, the new wave happened in science fiction, the new wave, and that changed science fiction forever. And so this 1960s is the end as far as what we'll be reading for Rocket Summer. And I've divided up the event into 4 weeks, even though that doesn't really fit into the July calendar that neatly. That's okay. You can really do it any way you want. But I've divided it up into 4 weeks. Week 1 is from the beginning of science fiction, whenever that was, up through the 1930s. So science fiction up through the 1930s is week 1. Week 2 is the 1940s. Week 3 is the 1950s. You'll never guess what week 4 is. They don't know, Roger. It's the 1960s. See, I fooled them. It's the 1960s. That's week 4. So it's not too difficult to keep track of. It's pretty simple, really. So what will I be reading? I will tell you what I hope to read. What I hope. It's always hope. And just so as you know, Rocket Summer has a whole bunch of really cool co-hosts that are joining me this year. I'll link them down below. A few of them have already put up their announcement videos, and they'll be talking about they'll be reading and what they're planning for Rocket Summer. So go check out those channels, which I'll link down below. But what am I going to be reading? Well, let's find out. In week 1, which is, remember, science fiction up through the 1930s, there are a couple books that I want to get to. One I have to get to because it's part of Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, the cheapest book club around. Every book in Roger's Cheap Old Book Club is available for free on Project Gutenberg. But I have a paper copy of it. And this book is The Moonpool by A. Merritt. This was from 1919, I think. I should have looked it up before I started making this video. But you know how professional I am. Not at all. So I think it's 1919. Let me just see. Yeah, it says copyright 1919 A. Merritt, so let's just go with that. There was a short story version of this before the novel version, but then Merritt expanded it into this, The Moonpool. Look at that guy on the cover. You know this book's going to be awesome just because of that. This is probably A. Merritt's most famous science fiction story. Probably The Moonpool. Very popular at one time, but you don't hear too much of Merritt anymore. There are a few of us on BookTube who read his books, but the general public not so much. But we will be reading for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club, The Moonpool, and it is part of week 1 of Rocket Summer, so that'll be cool. I mean, look at that guy. It's going to be awesome. Of course it is. If I have time, there's another book that I want to get to, though, and it's a book that has stories in it from the 1930s. And that's Who Goes There? Who Goes There and Other Stories. Shocking, suspenseful science fiction. And I was actually, this was one of the books that I was considering reading for Horror Mayhem in May, but I didn't have time to get to it, unfortunately. But that pretty much makes it a lock, I think, for Rocket Summer. Who Goes There, of course, is the novelette that became the thing in the cinemas. This is the story that inspired the first movie, Thing from Another World, which came out in the 1950s. And then, of course, the great 1980s version of the thing. So, if you like those movies, you definitely would want to read the story, and I'm going to. And there's Campbell Jr. there, John W. Campbell Jr. there, looking all serious. So, yeah, hope to get to this for the first week of Rocket Summer. So, week 2 is the 1940s, Roger. What do I have lined up for that? Well, I've got a couple things. One thing that I have that I would like to read is this book. This is 6 great short novels of science fiction. 6 great short novels of science fiction. So this is a bit larger than the other books. This is almost 400 pages, 384 pages. So this might be all I read for week 2. And most of these 6 novels, I think 5 of the 6 are from the 1940s. But let me just double check. It should say, yeah, The Blast by Stuart Clote was from 1947. Coventry by Robert A. Heinlein was from 1940. The Other World by Murray Leinster is from 1949. So the 2 deans of science fiction, Heinlein and Leinster, are both in here. Then we've got Barrier by Anthony Boucher from 1942. Now this next one, we're looking ahead to the 50s, because the next one is Surface Tension by James Blish, which was from 1952. Maturity by Theodore Sturgeon, however, was from 1947. So 5 of the 6 are from the 40s, and then 1 is looking ahead to the 1950s. This is a book I would really like to get to because there's some pretty cool stuff in this book. There's always a chance that I'll have time to read some more science fiction in week 2. If I do, I've got Edmund Hamilton's The Valley of Creation. The Valley of Creation. Edmund Hamilton is awesome. He wrote some really, really, really pulpy science fiction and some science fiction that wasn't quite so pulpy, but he was always entertaining. I always liked Edmund Hamilton. And this is from 1948, I think, but let me double check. Yes, this is a book from 1948 originally. This edition's got to be from the 60s, though. It has a very 60s look. Doesn't really say. Oh, yeah, it does. A Lancer book, 1967. But yeah, the story itself is from 1948. So that's the 40s. Now we're moving into the 1950s, a great decade for science fiction. I have a couple books here. This one I have to read just because I've had this book forever and this robot always makes me laugh. This is The Last Planet by Andre Norton. The Last Planet, originally titled Star Rangers. So you gotta read a book called Star Rangers. Those are the Rangers there, I'm assuming. And look at that robot. He is looking a little frightened. He looks a little nervous, that robot. What's going on with the Star Rangers and the robot? Well, I guess I have to read this book to find out. It is one of the best science fiction novels to appear this season, says the Springfield Republican, back in whenever this book came out. So, when did this book come out? I could speak. When did this book come out? Copyright 1953. So 1953, the 50s. This really looks like a book from the 50s. Fantastic old 1950s ace book. Actually, this book was probably published in the 60s, I'm certain. But the story is from the 1950s. So there you go. Next, another book for the 1950s, if I can get to it. War with the Robots. It's War with the Robots. Science fiction stories by Harry Harrison, a writer I happen to like a lot. So Harry Harrison's War with the Robots. Now, most of these stories are from the 1950s, but probably not all of them. But let me take a look. So we got 58, 56, 58, 59, 59. We have one story in here that was from 1961, but it looks like every other story in here was written in the 1950s, although this book was printed in 1962. But quite a few stories in here from Harry Harrison, and a lot of them, are from the 1950s. So there you go, War with the Robots. And then we're moving into the 1960s, that time when science fiction changed forever and became something quite different in many ways. I've got a couple books from the 1960s. And this one was reviewed recently by Grammaticus. Grammaticus, the fantastic channel Grammaticus. You could find Grammaticus linked down below. He talked about this book. This is Roger Zelazny's The Dream Master. I like Roger Zelazny an awful lot. He's usually pretty great, and this is The Dream Master. And when was this written? It was written in the 1960s. 1964, it was when a serialized version of this magazine appeared in Amazing Stories as He Who Shapes. And then the book came out in 1966, it looks like. So The Dream Masters, that's up for the 1960s this year. But we've also got one of my favorite science fiction writers, Clifford D. Simak, with The Goblin Reservation. The Goblin Reservation, which is a book I have not read, ever. So this is from 1968. Actually, I haven't read any of these books, but I've read a few Clifford D. Simak books, but not this one. Like I said, really good writer, Simak. And he wrote my favorite science fiction book of all time, which was City. But I have not read The Goblin Reservation, and so I'm due up to read this for the 60s. That'll close out Rocket Summer, like I said. I don't know that I'll get to all those books because I'm also reading Doc Savage and The Shadow and some other stuff. But during Rocket Summer, I'm definitely going to focus on the science fiction. So we'll see how I do. There you go. Rocket Summer. I'll remind you again when July comes closer. I will catch you next time.